For years now, we've watched either a single or two boosters land at landing zones 1 and 2 at SLC-13. This site was leased out to SpaceX and turned into a group of landing pads to support both the Falcon 9 and Falcon Heavy recovery operations. Over time, it has been responsible for tens of landings when a drone ship is not needed. This being said, not long ago, information came out regarding the site's new future owners. This change would mean SpaceX needs to find a new area to contract and build landing pads for future Falcon vehicle landing operations. In addition to this, just yesterday we learned that SpaceX is trying to avoid drone ship landings during crewed Falcon 9 missions. Instead, they are confident that they can land on the ground, saving both money and time. This change, however, would only increase the demand for booster landing sites when landing zones 1 and 2 become unavailable. Here I'll go more in depth into what exactly is happening with the current landing sites, why crewed missions might not use a drone ship, what to expect in the coming weeks, and more. Landing Zone 1 and Landing Zone 2, also known as LZ1 and LZ2 respectively, are landing facilities on Cape Canaveral Space Force Station for recovering components of SpaceX's reusable launch vehicles. Landing Zone 1 is the most commonly used out of the two for occasional Falcon 9 launches. LZ2 is usually only used when LZ1 is occupied or during a Falcon Heavy launch when two boosters land at the same time. Since 2015, the two landing pads combined have facilitated over 30 different booster landings across a host of different missions. Around 2 months ago, SLD-45 clarified that, as part of the SLD-45 allocation strategy, Phantom and Viaspace will be the only users of SLC-13 once the real property agreement is executed. In other words, SpaceX appears to be ending their use of landing zones 1 and 2 in the not-too-distant future. In an official document, it's quoted saying, "Through the LPAS, the U.S. Space Force and SLD-45 have selected 4 companies for allocation of launch property, at Space Launch Complex 15 to ABL Space, SLC-14 to Stoke Space, and SLC-13 to Phantom Space and Viaspace." This document and statement were released on March 7, 2023. Originally, LZ1 and LZ2 were built on land leased in February 2015, on the site of the former Cape Canaveral Launch Complex 13. SpaceX built Landing Zone 2 at the facility to have a second landing pad, allowing 2 Falcon Heavy boosters to land at the same time. The previous site was replaced by 2 circular landing pads 282 feet or 86 meters in diameter, and marked with a stylized X from the SpaceX company logo. 4 more 150-foot or 46-meter diameter pads were initially planned to be built to support the simultaneous recovery of additional boosters used by Falcon Heavy, although only 1 extra pad has been built. Planned infrastructure additions to support operations include improved roadways for crane movement, remote-controlled fire suppression systems in case of a landing failure, and a large concrete foundation away from the future 3 landing pads for attaching the booster stage when taking the rocket from vertical to horizontal orientation. As far as what exactly this lease ending means for the future, it's unclear as of right now. Many believe that SpaceX will begin building landing pads on one of the existing launch sites at the Cape. By now, Falcon 9 landings have gotten extremely reliable and consistent, which could give the company confidence to land them closer to valuable infrastructure. Also, this could be considered a stepping stone for landings, prior to work on Starship landing operations at LC-39A. It's important to point out that while SpaceX will move away from using LZ-1 and 2 at the Cape, word is that Falcon return to landing site missions will not go away from Florida. SpaceX has its own plans to carry that out without the need to use Landing Zone 1 and 2. When the landing pads were originally built, SpaceX was confident there would be at least a few failures and wasn't sure exactly how well this booster landing process would work. A lot of things have changed since then that will impact the company's decision. Not only can we expect changes with the primary surface landing zone for Falcon 9 boosters, but drone ships as well. Just yesterday, in a press briefing previewing the AX-2 mission, a SpaceX representative said Falcon 9 rockets for future crew missions, beginning with AX-2, will have the ability to land boosters back at the launch site. They previously had to land on a drone ship after launching crew missions. This would be quite a big deal for the company and Falcon 9 operations. While drone ship landings are very unique and allow the company to save entire rocket cores, landing back at the launch site or even just solid land offers even more benefits. Following landing, technicians and engineers typically board the landing platform and secure the rocket's landing legs to lock the vehicle in place for transport back to port. The first stage is secured to the deck of the drone ship with steel hold-downs welded onto the feet of the landing legs. All the way back in June 2017, Of Course I Still Love You started being deployed with a robot that drives under the rocket and grabs onto the hold-down clamps located on the outside of the Falcon 9 structure after landing. While they are continuing to advance and become more efficient, landing on the ground offers many benefits that SpaceX is interested in if possible. As far as what makes this option available now, it likely has to do with the success and confidence in this vehicle. Falcon 9s have been landing for a while now with about a ton of extra propellant left on board. If they're getting more confident in their operations, they may be able to dip into that margin to bring them back to shore. It was even confirmed by SpaceX that the Falcon 9 booster will make a landing back at LZ-1 rather than a drone ship because there is a little bit of extra Falcon performance available. All this being said, it comes back to the 2 landing pads and the future lease change at SLC-13. Operations at this facility began after 7 earlier landing tests by SpaceX, 5 of which involved intentional descents into the open ocean, followed by 2 failed landing tests on an ocean-going platform. In 2015, the Air Force's sign for LC-13 was briefly replaced with a sign identifying it as a landing complex. The site was renamed Landing Zone prior to its first use as a landing site. In January 2016, Elon indicated that he thought the likelihood of successful landings for all the attempted landings in 2016 would be approximately 70%, hopefully rising to 90% in 2017, and cautioned that the company expects a few more failures. That same year, the company applied for permission to build 2 additional landing pads at Landing Zone 1 for landing the boosters from Falcon Heavy flights. The next year, construction on a second, smaller pad began, called Landing Zone 2. This pad is located about 1,000 feet or 310 meters to the northwest of the first pad and is used for landing Falcon Heavy side boosters. By 2017, the landing pad was modified with a radar reflective paint to aid with the landing precision. Falcon 9 boosters mostly land on the LZ-1 pad and rarely on the LZ-2. Except in cases when a Cape Canaveral launched booster can't land there, as a previous booster is still sitting on that pad, as in the case with booster B107 3.5 in December 2022. The LZ-1 was already occupied by OneWeb's Flight 15 booster, so LZ-2 was used by a Falcon 9 for the first time. In relation to future landing options, looking at all the attempts at this site, the only failure didn't even result in any damage to the pad. During the SpaceX CRS-16 mission, the booster was meant to land at LZ-1, but instead crashed in the ocean, avoiding any destruction to the pad or surrounding infrastructure. And only a few days from now, on the 21st, Axiom Mission 2, or AX-2, will see a crewed Falcon 9 launch astronauts to the International Space Station. This will also be the first attempt at landing the booster back at LZ-1 rather than a drone ship. Not only this, but a few missions in July, August, and October of this year will all see the 2 landing pads in action with either Falcon Heavy or Falcon 9 launches. Something to look forward to in the coming months. SpaceX is trying to land future crewed Falcon 9 boosters on land rather than drone ships. At the same time, the company's main ground landing site, SLC-13, will be leased out to different companies in the future. This being said, SpaceX has a bit of time and will likely begin constructing options near existing launch sites at the Cape. We will have to wait and see how it progresses and the impact it has on the space industry. Thank you very much for watching.